On a forgotten clay tablet, buried for millennia under the sands of what we now call Iraq, a story is etched in tiny wedge-shaped marks. It speaks of a world-drowning flood, a massive boat built to save a chosen family, and birds sent out to find dry land, a story written down 1,000 years before the version many of us know from the book of Genesis. For historians, finding this was like discovering the original source code for one of humanity's most enduring myths. This is not just a parallel tale, it is the blueprint, the original file from which other flood stories were copied and pasted across the ancient world. And the hero who eventually goes in search of this incredible, world-altering secret, the man at the heart of this entire epic, is not a humble servant of a single god, but a restless, powerful, and deeply flawed tyrant king, a demigod named Gilgamesh. His story, pieced together from broken fragments of clay, is arguably the oldest piece of literature we have ever found, a voice calling out to us from the very dawn of civilization. I'm glad you're here, wishing you peace, rest, and maybe a little historical inspiration before sleep. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to see where you're listening from tonight, so feel free to drop your city or country and the local time in the comments below. It's always amazing to see this little community of night owls and history lovers stretching all across the globe. Our story begins in that same land, Mesopotamia, the cradle between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. It begins in a city called Uruk, a place that hums with a new and startling kind of energy. You must picture it not as ancient ruins, but as a living, breathing metropolis, perhaps the very first true city our world had ever known. The air is thick with the scent of baked clay from the million sun-dried bricks that form its towering walls, mingling with the dust of the surrounding plain, the sharp smell of bitumen used as mortar, and the aroma of roasting barley and simmering stews from countless courtyard homes. This is no sleepy village. This is a sprawling testament to human ambition, a universe of canals and temples, of crowded marketplaces and workshops where artisans craft wonders from lapis lazuli and carnelian brought from lands impossibly far away. And at the very heart of this urban giant, piercing the sky like a man-made mountain, stands the great ziggurat, the Eanna Temple, sacred to the goddess Ishtar. It is a city that buzzes with the pride of its own creation, a city built to last forever. Presiding over this marvel is Gilgamesh, and what a figure he is. He is not entirely human, you see. The scribes tell us he is 2/3 god and 1/3 man, the son of the priest-king Lugalbanda and the wise goddess Ninsun, she who can interpret the meaning of dreams. This divine blood courses through him, making him stronger, faster, and more beautiful than any mortal man. He is a king of terrible splendor, his body sculpted to perfection by the gods themselves, his stride long and confident as he walks the ramparts of his great city. He sees everything. He knows everything. He is the shepherd of his people, meant to protect them. But a shepherd with too much energy and not enough to do can sometimes worry his flock to death. And Gilgamesh is bored. He is consumed by a restlessness that has no worthy outlet. His divine energy, with no great war to fight or epic challenge to overcome, has turned inward, becoming a source of torment for the very people he is meant to lead. He drives the young men of the city to the point of collapse. There is always another layer to be added to the wall, another canal to be dredged, another pointless, brutal competition to prove his unmatched strength. He calls them from their homes for games of sport that feel more like punishments, wrestling and racing them until they are gasping in the dust, their spirits as bruised as their bodies. He allows no son to remain with his father, for Gilgamesh needs their labor, their energy, their very youth to feed his own insatiable ego. The city's vibrant life force is being drained, siphoned off to serve the whims of one supernaturally powerful and tragically immature man. And his tyranny does not end with the men. The text speaks of a darker shadow he casts over Uruk. The scribes wrote, "He will not leave a maiden to her mother, the daughter of the warrior, the bride of the young man." This practice, known in later ages as the droit du seigneur, or the right of the first night, meant that Gilgamesh, as king, claimed the right to be with any new bride before her own husband. Whether this was a literal reality or a powerful metaphor for his absolute abuse of power is one of those mysteries debated by historians. Was this a genuine policy of a historical king from 2700 BCE, or a literary device added later to paint him in the darkest possible colors, to emphasize how far he had fallen from the ideal of a just ruler? Either way, the effect on his people was the same. The joy of a wedding was soured by fear and resentment. The homes that should have been filled with celebration were instead filled with whispered prayers and quiet weeping. The very bonds of family and love, the fabric that holds a city together, were being torn apart by the one man sworn to protect them. So the people of Uruk, standing in the shadow of the magnificent walls built by their own exhausted hands, do the only thing they can. They cry out. Their complaints are not a riot in the streets. Who could stand against Gilgamesh? But a collective murmur of sorrow that rises up from the courtyards, from the marketplaces, from the darkened bedrooms. It is a sound of 1,000 sighs, a lament that drifts up past the towering ziggurat, past the city walls, and into the heavens themselves. They pray to Anu, the great father of the gods, the god of the sky who looks down upon all of creation. They ask him, "Did you create this wild bull of a man, this Gilgamesh, to be our tormentor? Is there no one who can stand against him, no one who can match his terrible strength and distract him from his people?" They don't ask for their king's destruction, but for a counterbalance, an equal, someone who can absorb his chaotic energy and perhaps, just perhaps, teach him what it means to be human. And in the silent expanse of the celestial realm, the gods hear. They listen to the quiet, desperate prayers of the people of Uruk, and they decide that something must be done. The great goddess of creation, Aruru, is summoned. Anu looks to her and gives a command that will change the fate of the king and his city forever, create his second self, his equal, a man to match the stormy heart of Gilgamesh. And so, in the celestial court, the great mother goddess Aruru, she who had fashioned the first of humankind on her divine potter's wheel, accepts her task. She hears the cries of Uruk and the command of Anu. She ceremonially washes her hands, preparing for the sacred act of creation. Then she pinches off a piece of clay, the very stuff of the earth, the substance of life in Mesopotamia. She considers it for a moment, imbuing it not with the perfect form of Gilgamesh, but with the raw essence of the sky god Anu himself, the spirit of the windswept plains. And with a decisive gesture, she casts this piece of clay not into the bustling city, but far out into the Eden, the wild and empty steppe that stretches beyond the cultivated fields. Where the clay lands, a new being takes form, and his name is Enkidu. He is not born of a woman, but of the earth itself. He rises from the dirt as if growing from it, a creature of pure nature. His entire body is covered in a shaggy coat of matted hair, a wild pelt to protect him from the sun and the cold. And his hair, the epic tells us, is long and fine like a woman's, or perhaps more like the waving tassels of Nisaba, the goddess of grain, flowing down his back in a silken, untamed cascade. He is magnificent, but in a way utterly alien to the polished, civilized beauty of Gilgamesh. He is the incarnation of the wilderness. He knows nothing of bread, the food of cities, nor of beer, the drink of men. His nourishment is the grass of the plains, which he chews alongside the graceful gazelles. His drink is the cool, muddy water he finds at the waterhole, lapping it up beside the wild beasts he considers his family. His days are a simple, rhythmic dance with nature. He feels the sun warm his hairy back as he runs with the herds, his powerful legs easily keeping pace with the swiftest creatures. He knows the secret paths through the scrubland, the locations of the best grazing spots, the scent of a predator on the wind. He communicates not with words, but with the grunts, snorts, and subtle gestures of the animal kingdom. He is their brother, their protector. He is strong, possessing a superhuman strength born of the wild earth, a strength to rival that of the king in Uruk. But unlike Gilgamesh, whose power is a tool of oppression, Enkidu's power is used in service to his herd. His stormy heart, a perfect mirror of Gilgamesh's own, beats in time with the untamed rhythms of the natural world, a force of instinct and freedom. This life of primal innocence is interrupted by the encroachment of the civilized world. A trapper, a man who makes his living by catching the wild animals of the steppe, begins to find his work thwarted. When day after day he digs his pits and sets his snares along the paths to the waterhole, only to return and find them filled in, his traps sprung and empty. At first, he thinks it bad luck, or perhaps the work of a rival, but then, hiding and watching, he sees an impossible sight. A man, but not a man. A hairy, wild creature moving with the grace of an animal who approaches the pits. This wild man gently frees a snared onager, then with astonishing strength, he smashes the wooden trap and fills the pit back in with earth, smoothing it over until the ground looks undisturbed. The trapper is frozen with a primal fear. The sight of Enkidu, this powerful being who is neither man nor beast, is deeply unsettling. He watches as Enkidu then leads the herd to the water, drinking among them as one of their own. For 3 days, the trapper observes this from a distance, his fear growing with each sighting. His livelihood is ruined. The animals, once his prey, are now protected by this guardian spirit of the steppe. His traps are useless as long as this wild man roams the plains. The trapper's face, the poem says, is pale with worry and fear as he retreats to his home, his heart pounding, his mind reeling from what he has witnessed. He is a man of the city, a man of order and craft, and he has just come face to face with the raw, chaotic power of the wilderness made flesh. Herein lies one of the story's deepest tensions, a theme that echoes through Mesopotamian culture. The world was divided between the city, a place of laws, grain, and gods, and the steppe, a place of nomads, wild animals, and unpredictable spirits. The city wall, like the one Gilgamesh was so obsessed with building, was more than just a defense. It was a psychological barrier separating the known world from the unknowable chaos beyond. Enkidu is the embodiment of that chaos. He represents everything that urban civilization defines itself against: wildness, freedom from society's rules, and a life lived in harmony with nature rather than in dominion over it. Scholars have often wondered if the story of Enkidu is a kind of cultural memory, an allegory for how nomadic, pastoral peoples were gradually drawn into the orbit of the great cities, a process of taming that was seen as both necessary and tragic. Perhaps Enkidu represents not just a rival for Gilgamesh, but the wild part of every human soul, that instinctual self we must suppress, for better or worse, to live together in a society. The trapper, however, is not concerned with such philosophical questions. His problem is practical and immediate. Defeated, he gathers his meager belongings and makes the long journey back toward the towering walls of the greatest city in the world, Uruk. He knows he cannot face this wild man himself. He needs advice, a plan, a power greater than his own. And so he goes, with a story on his lips that will set in motion a chain of events that will bind the man of the city and the man of the wild together forever. He leaves the steppe behind, where under the vast, starry sky, Enkidu lies down to sleep among the gazelles, utterly unaware that the world of men is about to come for him. The journey back from the edge of the world to its very center is a strange one for the trapper. As he walks, the landscape transforms around him. The vast, silent emptiness of the steppe, with its endless sky and rustling grasses, slowly gives way to the rigid geometry of civilization. First come the outlying shepherds' camps, then the carefully irrigated fields of barley and emmer wheat, laid out in grids of green and gold, shimmering in the heat. The air, once clean and tasting only of dust and wild herbs, now thickens with the smoke of cooking fires and the scent of livestock. Finally, rising from the horizon like a mirage, he sees them, the great sun-baked walls of Uruk. They seem impossibly high, a man-made cliff designed to hold the wilderness at bay, and as he passes through the monumental city gate, the quiet of the plains is shattered by the noise of 1,000 lives being lived at once. The clamor of the marketplace, the rhythmic chanting of priests from a distant temple, the sharp commands of a foreman overseeing a work crew. He pulls his dusty cloak tighter around himself, a man bringing a problem from the outside world into the very heart of human order. He finds his father, an old man whose eyes hold the patient wisdom of a lifetime spent reading the signs of the earth and the sky. In the cool darkness of their modest home, the trapper tells his tale. His voice is hushed, full of the awe and terror he felt watching the wild man. He describes Enkidu's raw power, the hair that covers his body, the way he runs with the gazelles as if he were one of them, and how he undoes the work of men with the simple, righteous fury of a storm. The old man listens without interruption, his gaze fixed on the middle distance, processing every word. When the story is finished, he nods slowly. He does not share his son's fear, but sees the shape of the problem with a clear and calculating eye. No man can fight this creature directly, my son, the father says, his voice raspy like dry leaves. His strength is not of the city, it is of the earth. His power comes from his innocence, from his wildness. To defeat him with a spear would be like trying to stab the wind. No, the solution must be more clever. You must return to the city, but you must go to the very center of its power. Go to our king, Gilgamesh. The trapper looks confused, but his father continues. Tell the king your story. Tell him of this man whose strength rivals his own. And then ask the king to grant you the service of a Shamhatu, a temple courtesan. The son is stunned. A woman? What could a woman do against such a beast? But his father explains the subtle logic, a logic born of a deep understanding of what it means to be human. You will take her with you to the waterhole. You must let her reveal her beauty to him, to show him the art of being a woman. When he sees her, his animal instincts will draw him to her. And after he has been with her, after he has known the touch of a civilized woman, the beasts of the steppe, his family, will no longer accept him. His wildness will be broken not by force, but by experience. He will be separated from his world, and his strength will be different. It is a profound and daring plan. In our modern world, the term for Shamhat's profession can be misunderstood, seen as something sordid or debased. But in ancient Uruk, a Shamhatu was something more complex. These women, often associated with the great temple of Ishtar, the goddess of both passionate love and terrible war, were vessels of a powerful civilizing force. They were bearers of culture. They knew music, poetry, and the sophisticated arts of human intimacy that separated people from the simple coupling of animals. Shamhat, the one who would be chosen, was not just a woman of pleasure. She was, in a way, a priestess of humanity itself. This is the mystery of her role, a status that historians still debate. Was she sacred, marginalized, or something in between? The epic treats her not as a tool, but as a pivotal and wise character, an agent of destiny. Following his father's counsel, the trapper makes his way to the king's court. Gilgamesh, ruler of Uruk, listens to the tale of the wild man with a growing fascination. A man who lives with gazelles, a man whose strength is so great he can tear apart traps with his bare hands. The idea of an equal, a rival, a second self out there in the wilderness ignites the king's restless spirit. He is not angry, he is intrigued. The existence of Enkidu is a challenge, an adventure waiting to happen. Without hesitation, he grants the trapper's request, and so a strange pair sets out from the city. The trapper, his face still etched with fear, now acting as a guide, and the woman, Shamhat. She walks with a grace and confidence that seems entirely out of place on the dusty track leading away from Uruk. She is the embodiment of the city, its perfumes, its soft fabrics, its intricate knowledge, and she is walking deliberately into the heart of the wilderness. They travel for 3 days, back to the waterhole where the trapper last saw the wild man. There, they wait. The trapper hides himself, but Shamhat, following the old man's instructions, prepares herself, ready to deploy the oldest and most powerful weapon of civilization. They sit in the quiet heat, the destiny of the wild man hanging in the balance, waiting for the sound of approaching hoofbeats and the arrival of the beast who must be made a man. They wait by the life-giving waterhole, a silent tableau of civilization poised to intercept the wild. The sun beats down, and the air shimmers with heat. For a day, then two, there is nothing but the drone of insects and the cry of a distant hawk. The trapper grows restless, but Shamhat is the picture of patience. Then, on the third day, a cloud of dust appears on the horizon. It grows, resolving itself into the familiar forms of the herd, coming for their evening drink. And moving among them, with an easy, loping gait, is Enkidu. The trapper's breath catches in his throat. "There he is, Shamhat," he whispers, his voice tight with fear. "This is the one. Now is the time. Bare your bosom, do not be timid, and let him take in your ripeness. He will see you, and he will draw near. Teach him, a savage man, the art of being a woman." Shamhat does as she is told. She lets her robe fall, revealing the form of a civilized human, a shape so different from the hairy wild creatures Enkidu has known. She stands not with aggression, but with a powerful stillness. Enkidu, leading the herd to the water's edge, stops dead. His animal senses are overwhelmed by a sight and a scent entirely new to him. He freezes, his head tilted, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and profound curiosity. The other animals drink and move on, but Enkidu remains rooted to the spot, mesmerized by this being who is so unlike anything in his world. He approaches her slowly, cautiously, as a wild thing might approach a strange new fruit. And she, in turn, does not run. She welcomes him. What follows is not a moment, but a passage of time, a ritual of transformation that lasts for 6 days and 7 nights. This is no brutal animal coupling. It is a slow, deliberate initiation into a new way of being. In Shamhat's arms, Enkidu learns about a world of touch that is not for fighting or for grooming, but for connection, for pleasure, for a kind of communication deeper than sound. She speaks to him, and though he does not yet understand the words, he understands the soft cadence of her voice. She introduces his palate to the taste of bread and the warmth of beer which she has brought with her. For 7 days, the world of the steppe, the rhythm of the herd, the cycle of grazing and sleeping, all of it melts away. His entire universe shrinks to the space occupied by this one woman. He is, the epic tells us, completely satiated by her. He is forgetting the world he was born into. On the 7th day, a profound change having settled deep within him, Enkidu's thoughts turn back to his family. He rises, his body feeling strangely different, and looks for his herd. He sees the gazelles grazing in the distance and moves toward them, expecting to fall back into his old life, as if from a dream. But as he approaches, the animals become skittish. A gazelle lifts its head, catches his scent, and lets out a sharp cry of alarm. In an instant, the entire herd turns and flees, their hooves thundering on the dry earth. They run from him. The wild creatures of the plains, the onagers, the ibex, all his companions, reject him. He is no longer one of them. He smells of the city, of perfume, of cooked food, of humanity. A panic seizes Enkidu. He tries to run after them, to chase them down as he has done 1,000 times in play, but his body betrays him. His knees, once so tireless, now feel heavy and weak. His wild speed is gone. The epic says his body was fouled, but perhaps it was his mind that had changed. He was no longer a creature of pure instinct, able to run without thought. He was now self-aware and that awareness was a weight. He stumbles to a halt, panting, watching the last of his family disappear over a rise. The vast open steppe has never felt so empty, so lonely. He is utterly alone. Slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat and confusion, he turns and walks back to Shamhat. He does not stand before her as an equal, but sinks to the ground and sits at her feet, looking up at her face, his eyes filled with a new and troubling light. The Epic says that at this moment, he had wisdom now, broader understanding. He is ready to listen, and Shamhat, her mission accomplished, begins to weave a new world for him with her words. "You are beautiful, Enkidu," she says gently. "You have become wise. You are like a god. Why would you want to roam the plains with beasts any longer? Come with me. I will lead you to Uruk the sheepfold, to the holy temple, the home of Anu and Ishtar." She tells him of a life of music and fine clothes, of feasts where the food is piled high, of people who laugh and celebrate. And she tells him of the one person in that city who is worthy of his attention. "I will show you Gilgamesh," she says, her voice painting a picture of the magnificent king, a man of great strength, his power overflowing like a wild bull. He is restless, just as you were. You will look at him and you will see yourself. He is waiting for a friend, a counselor, an equal to walk by his side. Enkidu listens, and for the first time, he understands. The door to his old life has been slammed shut, but Shamhat is opening another. He looks out at the wilderness that has rejected him, then back at the woman who has remade him. And in that moment, he makes a choice. He will go to Uruk. He will see this king named Gilgamesh. The road to Uruk is not taken in a single step. Before Enkidu can face the complexities of the world's greatest city, he must first pass through a sort of halfway house, a place that exists in the liminal space between the wilderness and the wall, a shepherd's camp. Here, under the watchful eyes of Shamhat and the curious gaze of the sheep herders, his education in the ways of humanity continues. The shepherds, seeing this magnificent, powerful man emerge from the plains, lay out for him the offerings of their world. They place before him bread, and they pour for him a rich, dark beer. Enkidu stares at these offerings, completely bewildered. He has only ever known the taste of grass and the cool clarity of water from a stream. He kneels, sniffing the baked loaf, poking at it, unsure of what to do. Shamhat, ever the patient teacher, sits beside him. "Eat the bread, Enkidu," she urges softly. "It is the portion of the gods, the staff of life that all people must have." She breaks off a piece and shows him how to eat. He mimics her, chewing the unfamiliar coarse texture. Then she gestures to the foaming goblet of beer. "Drink the beer, Enkidu. This is the custom of the land, the drink that makes the heart glad." He watches her drink, then lifts the heavy cup to his own lips. The taste is strange, pungent, and powerful. He drinks one goblet, then another. He drinks 7 in all. As the unfamiliar warmth spreads through his body, a profound change takes place. His tense, watchful demeanor melts away. His heart, heavy with the loss of his wild home, feels light and joyful. He begins to sing, his voice rough and unused to melody. For the first time in his life, he is truly relaxed, his spirit untethered. This ritual of consuming bread and beer was for the Mesopotamians the very definition of being civilized. It was what separated them from the beasts of the field, and for Enkidu, it is a point of no return. Filled with this newfound joy, he allows the shepherds to complete his transformation. He washes his body, scrubbing away the layers of dirt and grime from the steppe, his matted hair becoming clean and soft. They anoint him with fragrant oil, a soothing balm that feels alien and luxurious on his skin. And finally, they give him clothes, a simple woven tunic. He looks down at himself, a man in a garment, no longer a naked creature of the wild. He has become one of them. The shepherds give him a weapon, a staff or perhaps a sword, and that night he takes on a new role. As darkness falls over the camp, the familiar threat of the wilderness emerges from the shadows. Lions and wolves, drawn by the scent of the penned sheep, begin to circle the flock. But now the shepherds have a new guardian. Enkidu, who once ran with wild things, now stands against them. Using the raw strength of the steppe, he becomes the protector of these domesticated creatures. He catches the wolves, he fights off the lions, and for the first time, the shepherds can sleep through the night in peace. In a single day, he has gone from being a force of nature that thwarts the work of men to being the ultimate defender of human society against that same force. He has truly changed sides. His new world is taking shape, a world of purpose and community. But his destiny, the true reason the gods created him, is revealed by a chance encounter. A man traveling from Uruk stops at the camp, his face a mask of weary resignation. Enkidu, his understanding of human emotion now broader, asks the traveler why he looks so troubled. The man explains that he is on his way to a wedding in a nearby village, but the occasion is poisoned by the law of the land. He tells them of the tyrannical practice of Gilgamesh, how the king's drum is set up at every wedding, and how it is Gilgamesh who claims the right of the first night with every new bride. He will have intercourse with the destined wife, the man says, his voice low and bitter. He first, the husband afterward. This is the decree of the gods, decided from the moment his navel string was cut. As Enkidu listens to this, the happy haze of the beer vanishes, replaced by a cold, clarifying rage. The image of Gilgamesh that Shamhat had so carefully crafted, that of a noble, restless hero waiting for a friend, shatters into 1,000 pieces. This is not a hero. This is an oppressor. This is a perversion of the natural order, an abuse of power that his newly awakened human soul finds utterly repellent. The blood drains from his face, and his fists clench. His purpose, which had been simply to find a place in this new world, now becomes sharp and clear as a shard of obsidian. He was not created to be Gilgamesh's companion. He was created to be his reckoning. He rises to his full, imposing height, his eyes blazing with a righteous fire. I will go to Uruk, he declares, his voice a low growl that silences the entire camp. I will challenge him. I will shout in the streets of the city. I am the one who is strongest. I will be the one to change the order of things. The journey to Uruk is no longer a journey of curiosity. It is a march toward a confrontation that feels as inevitable as the rising of the sun. With his new, righteous purpose burning within him, Enkidu strides towards the great city of Uruk, with Shamhat hurrying to keep pace. As they pass through the monumental gates, a wave of sensation crashes over him. The air, thick with the smells of cooking fires, crowded bodies, and sacrificial incense, is a world away from the clean scent of the steppe. The noise is a deafening chorus of merchants haggling, children shouting, and the constant low hum of thousands of people living their lives in close quarters. For Enkidu, whose ears were tuned to the whisper of the wind and the call of a distant bird, it is a bewildering and overwhelming cacophony. People stop and stare as he passes. They have never seen a man like this. He is built like their king, a titan of muscle and bone, but there is a wildness to him, an untamed quality in his long hair and his piercing gaze. A crowd gathers, murmuring in awe. He is like Gilgamesh, one person whispers, but shorter perhaps, and heavier in the bone, a worthy rival for our king. They see him as a spectacle, a diversion, unaware that they are witnessing the arrival of their own salvation. Enkidu's eyes, however, are not on the curious crowds. He is scanning for a sign, listening to the currents of the city. He soon learns that the very thing the traveler had spoken of is about to happen. A wedding is being prepared. The ceremonial bed is being laid out in a fine house, and King Gilgamesh is preparing to make his royal procession to claim his terrible privilege. There is no time to waste. Guided by the sounds of a distant drum and the flow of the crowd, Enkidu makes his way through the labyrinthine streets. He arrives at the house of the bride just as the final preparations are being made. The doorway is hung with festive garlands, but the faces of the family within are taut with a barely concealed dread. Without a word, Enkidu plants his feet firmly on the threshold, his immense body filling the entrance. He crosses his arms, his face set like stone. He has become a human wall, a barricade of righteous fury. He will not move. Soon, the royal procession arrives. Gilgamesh, draped in fine robes, walks with an arrogant swagger, accustomed to all doors opening before him and all heads bowing. He sees the crowd, but then he sees the man blocking his path. He stops. The king's playful, expectant mood evaporates, replaced by a flash of disbelief and then hot fury. Who is this savage who dares to stand in his way? The two men lock eyes. In that moment, the world seems to fall silent. It is a meeting of two halves of a single soul, the civilized tyrant and the wild enforcer of justice. No words are exchanged, some words are unnecessary. Gilgamesh lunges forward, and the clash that the gods decreed finally begins. They seize each other in a wrestler's grip, two bulls locking horns in the narrow street. This is no graceful display of martial arts. It is a brutal, earth-shaking contest of pure strength. Their muscles bulge, sinews straining as each tries to gain purchase on the other. They grunt and heave, their feet stamping on the hard-packed earth. The epic tells us that the very foundations of the city are shaken by their struggle. The doorpost of the wedding house, against which Enkidu had braced himself, splinters and shatters under their immense pressure. The wall of the house itself trembles as they slam against it. The people of Uruk shrink back in terror and awe. This is a battle of gods, not men, unleashed in their streets. Gilgamesh, for the first time in his pampered, unchallenged life, is forced to fight with every ounce of his being. He has met a force equal to his own, a raw, untamed power that matches his divine strength. The arrogance is burned out of him, replaced by a desperate need to simply prevail. The struggle seems to last an eternity. They are so evenly matched, a perfect mirror of each other's power. But Gilgamesh, with his 2/3 divine blood, has a deeper well of stamina to draw from. With a final, desperate surge of power, he twists his body, leveraging all his weight, and forces Enkidu's knee down to the ground. He has won. He stands over his fallen rival, panting, his body screaming with exertion. But as he looks down at the defeated wild man, something unexpected happens. The white-hot rage that has fueled him, the arrogant fury that has defined his reign, suddenly vanishes. The text simply says, his anger abated. The violence of the struggle has acted like a fever breaking. It has purged him of his restless, toxic energy. He has been tested, truly tested, and in winning, he has lost his lust for dominance. He turns away from the threshold, the symbolic site of his transgression, his mission of tyranny forgotten, his mind reeling from the encounter that has changed him forever. In the dusty, wrecked doorway, Enkidu is on his knee, defeated. The roars of the crowd have died to a stunned silence. Gilgamesh stands over him, the victor, yet the fire in his eyes has been quenched. In this moment, Enkidu, the challenger, does not curse his conqueror. He does not spit in the dust or try to rise for a second round. Instead, he looks up at the magnificent, panting figure of the king, and his voice, when he speaks, is filled not with bitterness, but with a sudden profound understanding and awe. "How unique you are," he says, his words carrying clearly in the quiet street. "Your mother, the divine wild cow Ninsun, she indeed held your head high above all other men. The great god Enlil has decreed for you the kingship over the people, for this is your destiny. He has done what he came to do. He has stopped the king's transgression. He has absorbed his tyrannical rage. Now, having met that force head on, he recognizes it for what it is. Not simple evil, but a godlike power that has until this moment been without a worthy purpose or an equal counterpart. Gilgamesh is utterly disarmed. To be praised by the only man on earth who could withstand his strength, to be seen and understood by his equal, is an experience he has never known. All his life, he has received only the fearful flattery of his subjects or the stern counsel of the city elders. This is different. This is the respect of a peer, earned in the crucible of combat. The last vestiges of his anger melt away, replaced by a surge of warmth, of recognition. A smile touches his lips. He reaches down, extending a hand to his fallen rival. Enkidu takes it, and Gilgamesh pulls him effortlessly to his feet. Standing face to face, equals in stature and in spirit, they do something that astonishes the watching crowd. They embrace. The Epic tells us they kissed, and in that moment a friendship was forged, an unbreakable bond between the king and the wild man. The force of opposition has become a force of union. This is more than just a truce. It is the beginning of a legendary brotherhood. Gilgamesh, overjoyed, takes Enkidu by the hand and leads him through the streets of Uruk, not as a captive, but as a treasured companion. He brings him to the palace, to the temple, and most importantly, he brings him before his mother, the wise goddess Ninsun. She, who had prayed and worried over her son's arrogant and lonely path, sees Enkidu and understands immediately that this is the answer to her prayers. This is the companion her son was destined to find. In a solemn, heartfelt ritual, she formally adopts Enkidu as her own. She places a sacred pendant around his neck, marking him not just as Gilgamesh's friend, but as his brother, entrusting him with the well-being of her powerful, reckless son. Enkidu, the man born of clay in the wilderness, who never knew a mother or a father, now has a family. The city of Uruk breathes a collective sigh of relief. The people watch the two friends walking together, inseparable, and they rejoice. The restless energy of their king, which had been a source of such torment, is now channeled into this powerful new friendship. The endless competitions cease, the forced labor eases, the shadow of the king's tyranny lifts from the wedding houses. Gilgamesh is transformed. He is no longer bored and cruel. He has found his other half, someone to talk to laugh with, to confide in. And Enkidu, who had been adrift between the world of beasts and the world of men, has found his place. He is the king's advisor, his conscience, his unwavering shadow. He brings the wisdom of the wild into the heart of the city, tempering Gilgamesh's impulsive nature with patience and a deep, intuitive understanding of the world. The bond between them is a subject of awe and wonder, a love so profound it has echoed through the millennia. Scholars and poets have long debated its precise nature, for the language the epic uses is one of staggering intimacy and devotion. Gilgamesh would later say he loved Enkidu as a wife, a statement that speaks to a connection far deeper than simple camaraderie. Whether it was a romantic bond as we might understand it today, or an expression of the ancient world's ideal of a heroic, soul-deep friendship between men, a brotherhood of warriors considered the most sacred of relationships, is a mystery veiled by the distance of 4,000 years. But what is clear is that it was the central, defining relationship of both their lives. They were two sides of a coin, the wild and the city, the instinctual and the intellectual, finally made whole. But this new, harmonious whole creates its own problem. A king like Gilgamesh, a demigod crackling with energy, cannot simply sit in peace. His power, now yoked to a noble purpose and guided by a true friend, needs a grand stage upon which to act. The small concerns of ruling a peaceful city are no longer enough. An adventure is needed, a quest worthy of two such heroes. For a time, a beautiful and unfamiliar peace settles over the city of Uruk. The king, Gilgamesh, walks with his new brother, Enkidu, and his formidable energy, once a plague upon his people, is now a source of strength and stability. The city thrives, but the king himself, in this newfound quiet, begins to feel a different kind of torment. With no struggle to occupy his mind, no grand project to consume his days, he is left alone with his thoughts, and his thoughts inevitably turn to the one limitation he cannot punch or wrestle into submission, his own mortality. He watches an old man shuffle through the marketplace. He presides over a funeral for a loyal courtier. He sees the world move in its endless cycle of birth and death, and he understands, with a chilling clarity, that he too is subject to this inexorable law. Though he is 2/3 divine, that final human third is an anchor that will one day pull him down into the dark, silent land of dust from which no one returns. One evening, as he and Enkidu are sitting together, he turns to his friend, his eyes clouded with a deep melancholy. "My friend," he says, his voice low, "the days of men are numbered. Everything we do is but a puff of wind. Soon I too will be stretched out on my deathbed, and I will not rise again. I look at the wall, and I see the heads of the dead floating down the river, and I know that my fate is the same. I cannot stand it, Enkidu. I cannot bear the thought of my life simply ending, of my name being forgotten. He is gripped by an existential dread, the fear of oblivion. His answer to this fear is not acceptance, but defiance. If he cannot live forever, then his name must. He must perform a deed so great, so audacious, that it will be sung about for all time. His eyes light up with a feverish ambition. He leans forward, grabbing Enkidu's arm. I have a plan, he declares. Far from here in the west, there is a forest, a sacred place guarded by the gods. It is the land of the living, the cedar forest. In this forest lives a creature of immense power, a monster named Humbaba. We will go there, you and I. We will kill Humbaba, and we will cut down the holy cedars. We will stamp out this evil from the world, and I will establish an eternal name for myself. Enkidu's face, which had been full of sympathy for his friend's sorrow, now turns pale with absolute terror. He knows of this place. In his wild days, he had roamed the edges of that very forest. He knows the stories. This is not some simple monster Gilgamesh speaks of. Humbaba was appointed as the guardian of the forest by Enlil, the chief of the gods himself. To attack Humbaba is to spit in the face of the divine order. My friend, we cannot do this, Enkidu pleads, his voice trembling. I have seen the entrance to the forest. When Humbaba roars, it is the sound of a deluge. His speech is fire, his breath is death itself. He can hear a rustling in the forest from 60 leagues away. Why would you want to go to this place? It is a battle you cannot win. This is the first great test of their friendship. Enkidu, whose soul is still tied to the rhythms of the natural and divine world, understands the concept of hubris. He knows there are boundaries that mortals should not cross. But Gilgamesh, blinded by his fear of death, cannot see this. He sees only the prize, the glory. He scoffs at his friend's fear. What has happened to your strength, Enkidu? Are you so afraid of dying? A man who dies in battle with his name on his lips lives forever in the memory of his people. If I fall, they will say, Gilgamesh fell fighting the mighty Humbaba. What greater legacy could there be? He uses their bond as his ultimate weapon of persuasion. I will walk in front of you, he says, his voice ringing with charisma, and you will walk behind me. Your voice can shout, go forward, do not be afraid. With you by my side, what can harm us? Two men together, two strands of a rope, are not easily broken. This desire for cedar was not pure fantasy. For a civilization like Mesopotamia, built from river mud in a land with few trees, the magnificent cedars of Lebanon were a resource of almost mythical value. They were the key to building vast temple roofs and monumental gates. Real kings led real military campaigns to the west to secure this precious lumber. The story of Gilgamesh, then, may be a glorious mythologized echo of these historical expeditions, transforming a quest for resources into a heroic battle against a divine monster, the personification of a dangerous and foreign wilderness. But for Enkidu, the danger is not a metaphor. It is real. He has heard the monster's roar. Yet he looks at his king, his brother, and he sees that his mind is made up. Torn between his profound fear and his profound love, Enkidu makes his choice. With a heavy heart and a soul filled with foreboding, he agrees. The decision is made. Gilgamesh, his spirit soaring, leads his friend to the great forges of Uruk. Their impossible journey has begun, and its first step is to craft the weapons worthy of killing a god's own monster. The king's grand design now irrevocably set in motion, begins at the city's great forges. The air in the workshops grows thick with the smoke of charcoal and the roar of bellows pumping life into the fires. The finest smiths in Uruk are summoned and given a task of impossible proportions. Gilgamesh commands them to forge weapons not for men, but for demigods. Day and night, the rhythmic clang of hammers on anvils echoes through the city, a percussive announcement of the king's deadly intent. They cast enormous axes, each one weighing 3 talents, well over 100 pounds of gleaming bronze. They forge mighty swords, their blades long and terrible, with hilts and pommels also weighing talents, so heavy that a normal man could barely lift one from the ground. When the work is done, the weapons are laid out for inspection. They are magnificent, beautiful, and utterly terrifying. Gilgamesh and Enkidu each take up their armaments, the immense weight feeling balanced and ready in their powerful hands. Armed for their monstrous task, Gilgamesh presents his plan to the assembly of the elders. He stands before the wise old men of his city, his new axe resting on his shoulder, and speaks with the unshakable confidence of youth. He tells them of his journey to the cedar forest, of his intent to kill the great Humbaba and establish an eternal name. He asks for their blessing. The elders, however, do not share his enthusiasm. They look at him not with admiration, but with a deep, weary concern. "You are young, Gilgamesh," one of them says, his voice a dry rustle, "and your heart carries you away. You do not know what you are undertaking. We have heard of this Humbaba. His voice is a storm. His breath is a killing frost. What makes you think your strength alone is enough to face such a being?" They implore him to reconsider, to remember his duty as the shepherd of Uruk, a city that finally knows peace. His life, they remind him, is not his alone to throw away on a reckless quest for fame. Seeing that the king's mind is a closed door, they turn to his companion. Their old eyes settle on Enkidu, the wild man who has become their king's conscience. They see the fear that he cannot completely hide, and they place the heavy weight of responsibility squarely upon his shoulders. "If he must go," the elder says to Gilgamesh, "then let Enkidu walk before you. He knows the paths in the wilderness. He has traveled the road to that forest. The one who goes in front is the one who protects his companion. Let him be your guide and your shield." Enkidu bows his head, accepting the charge. He, who is crippled with fear of the monster, is now formally tasked with ensuring the king's survival on a mission he believes is suicidal. The final blessing must come from a higher authority. Gilgamesh leads Enkidu to the Eanna temple to see his mother, the goddess Ninsun. When she hears the finality in her son's voice, her heart is flooded with a mother's sorrow. She knows she cannot reason with the fire Shamash has placed in his heart. With a heavy sigh, she ascends to the roof of the palace, her private place of worship. She bathes herself in clean water, puts on the robes of a priestess, and lights an offering of sacred incense to the great sun god, Shamash. As the fragrant smoke curls up into the late afternoon sky, she raises her hands and cries out, her voice a mixture of prayer and bitter complaint. "O great Shamash, why have you burdened my son, the child of my own womb, with such a restless, relentless heart? Now you have stirred him to go on a long journey, to a place from which he may not return, to face a battle he may not survive. Why?" Her prayer then turns to a desperate plea. "As he travels, I beg you, watch over him. Keep the path to the cedar forest clear. Command the winds to be his allies. When he faces the terrible Humbaba, let the 13 storm winds rise up and blow in the monster's face to blind him and aid my son's cause. Watch over him, Shamash, until the day he returns safely to the walls of Uruk. Having made her plea, she descends from the roof and embraces Enkidu. She hangs another, more personal amulet around his neck, next to the one that marked him as her adopted son. Mighty Enkidu, she says, her divine eyes filled with tears. I have no other son but Gilgamesh. Now I entrust him to you. Though you were not born of my body, you are my child now. Promise me you will see him through this danger. Promise me you will bring him home. Enkidu, his own heart aching with the goddess's grief and his own fear, can only nod his assent. The heroes are now ready. They have been armed by men, cautioned by elders, and blessed by a goddess. They stride to the great western gate of Uruk, where the entire city has gathered to see them off. The elders give their final, reluctant blessing, and the two friends step out of the city, leaving the world of men behind as they begin their long walk into the unknown. And so, they begin their great journey. They stride out from the gate of the setting sun, leaving the cheering and the worried faces of Uruk behind them. The flat, familiar landscape of home, crisscrossed with irrigation canals and dotted with date palm groves, soon gives way to the open, dusty plains of the steppe. This is Enkidu's old world, but he does not pause. He walks with a steady, determined pace, his eyes fixed on the western horizon. As the elders commanded, he takes the lead. Gilgamesh, the king who is used to all others following him, now walks in his friend's footsteps. Enkidu is the master here in the wild places. He knows how to read the terrain, how to find water, how to sense the subtle shifts in the wind. He is their guide, leading them toward the very source of his deepest fears. Their pace is not human. The epic marks their progress with a hypnotic, rhythmic formula that speaks of their divine stamina. At 20 leagues, they stop to eat a hurried meal of roasted barley and dried dates. At 30 leagues, as the sun dips low and the sky turns to bruised purple and orange, they make their camp for the night. In this manner, they cover 50 leagues in a single day, a journey that would take a normal merchant caravan 3 full days to complete. The world streams past them in a blur of brown and green. Day after day, the rhythm is the same. March, eat, camp, repeat. 20 leagues to a meal, 30 to a bed on the hard ground, 50 leagues from sunrise to sunset. They cross 7 mountains, their sandals wearing thin on the sharp scree, their bodies powered by a relentless, forward-moving will. The landscape itself transforms as they travel. The flat plains begin to swell and rise, becoming rolling hills, and then the jagged foothills of a great mountain range. The air grows thinner and cooler. They are leaving the heartland of Sumer and venturing into the unknown lands of the west. For Gilgamesh, it is a thrilling adventure, every new vista a sign of his growing legend. For Enkidu, every step is a silent battle against the dread coiling in his stomach. He feels the proximity of the forest like a change in pressure, a growing darkness on the edge of his senses. He is leading his beloved friend, his brother, into the jaws of a monster he knows to be invincible. At the end of each grueling day, as dusk settles in the high country, they perform a solemn ritual. Gilgamesh finds a high place on a mountainside and clears a space for them to sleep. He draws a circle of flour on the ground, an offering to the gods, and stands within it, his face turned toward the setting sun, praying for a sign. He prays for a dream, an omen from his divine protector, Shamash, to guide him and give him courage. Bring me a dream, a favorable one, he whispers to the wind, before lying down to a troubled sleep. Enkidu, for his part, prepares a rough shelter for them, a small defense against the cold mountain night and the things that haunt his thoughts. He watches his friend sleep, his own heart too heavy for easy rest. This journey is more than a simple physical trek. It feels as though they are walking off the edge of the human map and into the realm of myth. The relentless pace, the superhuman endurance, it all suggests a transition into a different kind of reality, a world where the gods are close and the monsters are real. The journey of 1,000 miles, or 6 weeks as the scribes would measure it, is a spiritual crucible. It strips away everything but their core purpose and their bond with each other. The king of the city has put his life completely in the hands of the man of the wild, a profound act of trust that solidifies their brotherhood even as they walk toward what seems like certain doom. Day after day, league after league, they push onward, leaving their world farther and farther behind, until at last they stand before the final, towering mountain range that guards the entrance to their destination. Below them, stretching as far as the eye can see, is a dark, brooding ocean of green, the cedar forest. They have arrived, and that night, as Gilgamesh once more makes his offering of flour and falls into a fitful sleep, the dreams finally come. On the dark threshold of the sacred forest, Gilgamesh succumbs to a sleep as deep and heavy as the shadows around them. And in that sleep, the dreams he prayed for finally arrive, but they are not the clear, favorable omens he had hoped for. They are terrifying, chaotic nightmares. He dreams that he and Enkidu are standing at the foot of a colossal mountain. As they watch, the mountain groans, shudders, and then collapses in a deafening roar of rock and dust. A landslide of unimaginable force thunders down upon them, and Gilgamesh is pinned, his legs trapped, his body crushed by the weight of the earth. Just as the darkness is about to consume him, a figure appears out of the blinding dust, a man, impossibly beautiful and bright. The figure effortlessly takes Gilgamesh by the arm, pulls him free from the rubble, and gives him cool water to drink, saving him from certain death. Gilgamesh wakes with a violent gasp, his heart hammering against his ribs. He sits bolt upright, his eyes wide with terror, and shakes his friend awake. "Enkidu, did you call me? Did a god pass by? Why is my body trembling and my skin covered in this cold sweat?" He recounts the terrifying vision, his voice shaky. "My friend, I had a dream, and it was a terrible one." Enkidu listens patiently, his own fear a cold knot in his stomach. But he knows his role. He is the counselor, the keeper of his friend's courage. He cannot allow Gilgamesh's resolve to crumble now. He smooths the fear from his own face and offers a calm, confident interpretation. "Do not be afraid, my friend," he says, his voice steady. "The dream is a favorable one. The mountain that fell upon you, that is no mountain. That is the ferocious Humbaba. The dream means that we will seize him, we will defeat him, and his broken body will be thrown down like so much rubble. And the beautiful man who saved you, That is our glorious protector, the sun god Shamash. He will be with us in our hour of need. Bolstered by this confident reading, they press on. The next night, after another grueling march, they make camp again, and again a nightmare assails the king. This time, he dreams he is wrestling a colossal wild bull. The beast is terrifying, its horns sharp, its bellowing so powerful it splits the very ground beneath his feet, kicking up a choking cloud of dust that darkens the sky. The bull pins Gilgamesh, its immense weight crushing the air from his lungs. He is helpless, suffocating in the dust. And then, once again, the same radiant figure from the first dream appears, takes him by the hand, and offers him water, saving him. He wakes, gasping for air, and turns once more to Enkidu. Again, Enkidu, the one who has lived his life in fear of this place, must be the voice of fearless resolve. My friend, he says calmly, this is another good omen. The wild bull is not our enemy. It is the symbol of our great ally, Shamash. He is the one who will take us by the hand and pull us from the dust of battle when we are in peril. The tablets that record their journey are broken here, but they tell of at least one more dream, perhaps the most terrifying of all. Gilgamesh dreams that the world goes completely dark. The sky cracks open with a bolt of lightning, and a fire ignites, consuming everything in its path. And then, from the burning heavens, death itself begins to rain down upon the world, a shower of ash and embers. It is a vision of pure apocalypse. He wakes in a state of utter despair, convinced that the dream is a prophecy of their doom. How could such a vision be anything but a warning to turn back? But Enkidu, with a heroic act of will, suppresses his own terror and finds a way. The fire is Humbaba's fury, he admits, but the lightning, the light that breaks the darkness, that is the coming of Shamash. The reign of death is not for us, my friend. It is for Humbaba. It is a sign that after the fire of battle, the monster will fall. In this strange and poignant ritual, repeated night after night, the true nature of their bond is revealed. The mighty Gilgamesh, the demigod, is the one haunted by fear, his subconscious mind screaming warnings at him, and Enkidu, the reluctant companion, the one who knows the true danger, must perform a kind of therapy on his friend's psyche. We will never know if he truly believed his own interpretations, or if he was simply telling the king what he needed to hear, a series of pious lies born of immense love and loyalty. He may have been trying to convince himself as much as his friend, turning fear into a weapon against fear itself. Whatever the truth, it works. With his friend's steady voice, transforming his nightmares into prophecies of victory, Gilgamesh's courage is rekindled. They have faced the terror in their sleep and have, through the power of friendship, bent it to their will. They now stand, finally, at the gate of the cedar forest itself. The time for dreaming is over. They stand at the forest's edge, a clear, invisible line separating the world of the sun from a world of shadow. As they step across the threshold, the change is instantaneous and profound. The air grows still and heavy, thick with the intoxicating, almost suffocating perfume of cedar. Above them, the trees are of an impossible scale, their ancient trunks like the pillars of a colossal green cathedral, their canopy so dense it weaves a ceiling that blots out the sky. The world is cast in a perpetual, emerald twilight, and the only sounds are the whisper of their own breathing and the unnerving creak of ancient wood. The epic says they walked down a straight path, a sign that this was no natural wood, but a divinely crafted domain, an orderly garden for a terrible master. And with every step they take down this path, they feel a presence, a vast and ancient consciousness that is aware of their intrusion. The sheer oppressive sanctity of the place begins to work on Gilgamesh. The bravado that carried him from Uruk, the courage he gleaned from Enkidu's dream interpretations, it all evaporates like mist in this sacred gloom. A wave of numbing weakness washes over him. His mighty arms, which had so recently hefted his colossal axe, feel like leaden weights. He stops, his face pale, his breath coming in ragged bursts. "My friend," he whispers, his voice barely audible, "I cannot go on. A paralysis has seized me. My hands are numb." The terrifying reality of their quest, the sheer hubris of it, has finally broken through his ambition. He is a king, a demigod, but in this place he feels like nothing more than a trespasser about to be judged. In this moment of crisis, a strange and powerful reversal occurs. Enkidu, who had been dragged on this journey against his every instinct, who had been plagued by a deep and abiding fear, now finds his own courage stirring. Seeing his friend, his invincible king, falter, Enkidu's own fear is burned away by a surge of loyalty. He grabs Gilgamesh by the shoulders, his grip firm. "Remember the proud words you spoke in Uruk," he says, his voice sharp and clear. "Remember your boasting. A man who is hesitant cannot be a leader. Do not retreat, do not turn back." He reminds Gilgamesh of their bond, the strength they find in each other. "My friend," he says, his voice ringing with newfound conviction, "though we may be afraid, we must go forward. Two men together, a 3-ply rope, is not easily broken. Let your battle cry resound. The time for fear is past." And with his friend's strength now flowing through him, Gilgamesh straightens his back, tightens his grip on his axe, and nods. They continue, deeper into the heart of the forest. They come to a great green mountain, the very heart of the cedar domain. And from the peak comes a sound that freezes the blood in their veins. It is a roar, a sound so deep and powerful that the ground beneath their feet trembles, and the ancient cedars around them shed their leaves in a sudden, fearful shower. It is the sound Enkidu remembers from his wild days, the sound of Humbaba, and then he emerges. He is a creature of nightmare made real, a giant hulking form, his face a grotesque and terrifying spectacle. It is not a face of flesh, but appears to be a single, long coiled intestine, a living labyrinth of entrails where a mortal man might see his own terrible fate spelled out. His teeth are the fangs of a dragon, his feet the talons of a vulture, his hands the paws of a lion, and shimmering around him, like heat rising from a fire, are his 7 terrifying auras, his malamu, layers of divine splendor that radiate a palpable aura of dread, paralyzing any who dare to look upon him. He fixes his gaze, a gaze of pure death, upon the 2 heroes. His voice, when it comes, is the grinding of rock. "Fools," he bellows, "insects, who has led you to my door?" He focuses on Enkidu, a sneer of recognition on his grotesque face. "You, I know your kind, a creature who has never known a father, who has never suckled at his mother's breast. I have watched you, and now you have brought this weakling Gilgamesh to me. I should rip the throat from him and feed his flesh to the screaming eagles and the vultures. His every word is a hammer blow of intimidation, his presence an overwhelming force of pure terror. Gilgamesh and Enkidu are frozen, pinned in place by the monster's dreadful power. Their weapons feel useless, their courage has turned to water. In that final desperate moment, remembering Ninsun's prayer on the rooftops of Uruk, they both turn their faces to the slivers of sky visible through the canopy and cry out with one voice, "Glorious Shamash, help us." As their desperate plea echoes through the twilight of the forest, the heavens answer. The sun god Shamash, hearing the cry of the son of Ninsun, acts with swift and terrible power. From the four corners of the world he summons the great winds. The sky darkens as they gather, not with clouds, but with the rushing invisible forms of the north wind, the south wind, the east wind, and the west wind. With them come the whirlwind, the tempest, the searing sandstorm, the biting ice wind, and the demon wind. All 13 winds are unleashed, a supernatural hurricane directed at a single point on the earth, the monster Humbaba. They converge on him in a deafening vortex of power, a howling irresistible force that tears at him from every direction at once. The storm blinds Humbaba, filling his eyes with dust, leaves, and shattered branches. It pins him in place, his mighty legs unable to move forward or backward. He is trapped in the eye of a divine tempest. Most importantly, the ferocious winds blast away his 7 terrifying auras. One by one, the shimmering layers of his malamu are stripped from him, torn away and scattered like smoke. His primary weapon, the paralyzing dread that radiated from his very being, is gone. Exposed, blinded, and battered, he is no longer a force of divine terror. He is now just a monster, a cornered beast of immense physical strength, but a physical beast nonetheless. The spell of fear is broken. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, freed from their paralysis, look at each other, and a single silent understanding passes between them. This is their chance. They charge. Gilgamesh raises his colossal bronze axe, the might of heroes, and swings it in a glittering arc. Enkidu draws his sword from the sheath at his hip, its blade a flash of deadly light in the gloom. The battle is a brutal, chaotic affair. Humbaba, roaring in fury and pain, thrashes against the bonds of the wind, swatting at them with his lion-like paws. The heroes dodge and weave, their weapons finding their marks, striking his legs, his chest, his thick neck. Trees are splintered in the struggle, the sacred forest floor is torn asunder, and the air is filled with the monster's bellows of rage and the heroes' grunts of exertion. They are fighting with a desperate, unified strength, 2 halves of a single warrior moving as one. Finally, they gain the upper hand. Gilgamesh manages to get behind the monster, using his wrestler's skill to lock him in a hold, bringing him stumbling to his knees. He presses the razor-sharp edge of his axe against Humbaba's throat. The battle stops. The winds die down to a low moan. Defeated, the monster's entire demeanor changes. The rage vanishes, and his grotesque face twists into a mask of pleading. "Mercy, Gilgamesh," he gasps, his voice no longer a roar, but a desperate rasp. "Let me live. You will be my master, and I will be your servant. This forest, these sacred trees, they will all be yours. I will cut the finest cedars for you, and build you a palace that will make your name immortal. Spare me." For a moment, Gilgamesh hesitates. His arm trembles. He is moved by a flicker of pity for this fallen guardian. To have such a creature as his servant would be a glory beyond imagining. He looks to his friend, his eyes asking the question, "What should we do?" Enkidu, however, is not swayed by the monster's plea. His face is hard, his eyes clear and cold. He sees the trap. "My friend, do not listen to him," he says urgently. "Do not be a fool. A cornered monster offers 1,000 false promises. The moment you release him, his strength will return, and he will kill us both. We will be trapped in this forest forever. There is no mercy for us here. Strike now. Kill him before the great god Enlil, his master, discovers what we have done, and his divine wrath falls upon us. We have come too far to turn back." Enkidu's words are like a splash of ice water, clearing Gilgamesh's mind of the fog of pity. He understands. His friend is right. This is a moment of grim necessity. He hardens his heart, tightens his grip on his axe, and nods to Enkidu. Enkidu lunges forward, driving his sword deep into the monster's neck. As Humbaba reels back, Gilgamesh brings his axe down with all his might, severing the great grotesque head from its body. For a moment, the giant corpse remains kneeling, and then it crashes to the forest floor with a ground-shaking thud that echoes through the trees. A profound and terrible silence falls. The guardian is dead. They have done the impossible. They stand, panting, splattered with monstrous blood, victorious in the heart of a silent, desecrated forest. In the profound silence that follows the monster's death, the two heroes stand panting, their bodies slick with sweat and gore. The great guardian is dead at their feet. They have achieved the impossible, but their task is only half finished. Gilgamesh's goal was not just to kill the monster, but to bring home the forest's treasure. With a shared look of grim resolve, they turn their attention to the silent, watching trees. They choose the most magnificent of all the cedars, a colossal specimen whose fragrant top, the epic tells us, scraped the heavens. This is not just a tree, it is a sacred pillar of the god's domain. And with the rhythmic swing of their mighty bronze axes, they begin to chop it down. The clean, sharp scent of fresh-cut cedar fills the air, a perfume of victory and sacrilege. Enkidu, who once ran with the wild things and protected them, now acts as the agent of their destruction, his fear replaced by the fierce, focused energy of the conqueror. Far away in the celestial realm, the god Enlil, lord of earth and master of the cedar forest, feels the sacrilege like a tremor in the fabric of the cosmos. He feels the death of his guardian and the bite of bronze into his sacred tree. A cold, divine fury builds within him. These arrogant mortals, this upstart king from Uruk and his wild companion, have trespassed in his holy domain, murdered his servant, and are now plundering his property. Their victory, so glorious in their own eyes, is, to Enlil, a crime of the highest order. A price will have to be paid for this transgression. A shadow of divine retribution begins to gather, unseen and unfelt by the triumphant heroes in the distant forest. But it is a shadow that will eventually fall upon them both. Unaware of the anger they have stoked in the heavens, Gilgamesh and Enkidu complete their work. They fell the great cedar and many others besides, until they have a trove of precious lumber. They lash the logs together, constructing a massive raft, wide and sturdy enough to make the long journey home. And as their final gruesome trophy, they hoisted the monstrous severed head of Humbaba aboard, propping it up for all to see. They pushed the raft into the great Euphrates River, which flows from these western mountains all the way back to the plains of Mesopotamia. The arduous, soul-testing journey on foot is replaced by a triumphant, leisurely float downstream. Enkidu, the man who knows the wilderness, takes the rudder, guiding the raft through the currents. Gilgamesh, the conquering king, stands at the prow, his hand resting on the ghastly head of his vanquished foe. It is an image of absolute victory. As they round the final bend in the river, the shining sun-baked walls of Uruk come into view. The watchmen on the ramparts see them coming, see the impossible sight of a raft laden with priceless cedar and the terrifying head of a monster from legend. A great cry goes up, spreading through the city like wildfire. The people of Uruk pour out of the gates, lining the riverbanks, their faces filled with disbelief, and then wild, unrestrained joy. Their king has returned, their hero. The celebration is immediate and ecstatic. The entire city rejoices as the heroes disembark, bringing their spoils ashore. Gilgamesh, the hero, immerses himself in the waters of the river, washing away the blood, grime, and exhaustion of his long journey. He combs his long, matted hair, anointing it with fine oil. He casts off his filthy, travel-stained clothes and dons the magnificent robes of his office, placing his royal crown upon his head. He is transformed. He is no longer the wild-eyed adventurer, but the king of Uruk, resplendent, beautiful, and radiating a power and glory far greater than before. He has faced death and returned a true hero. The finest of the cedar logs he dedicates to the city, commanding his craftsmen to build a new, monumental gate for Uruk, a gate whose fragrant, towering doors will stand forever as a testament to his great deed and his legendary friendship. The city is in a state of euphoria, its king at the absolute zenith of his fame and splendor. And it is in this perfect moment of triumph, as he stands clean and shining in his royal glory, that he attracts the gaze of a goddess. At the very peak of the city's celebration, as Gilgamesh stands bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, his glory is so potent it shines all the way to the heavens, and it attracts the eye of a goddess, not just any goddess, but Ishtar, the formidable patron of Uruk herself, the goddess of the morning and evening star, the goddess of passionate love and the grim fury of war. She is beautiful, powerful, and dangerously capricious, her affections as fleeting as her rages were eternal. Looking down upon the magnificent hero king, clean and robed, his divine blood radiating a victorious splendor, Ishtar is overcome with a searing desire. She sees in him the perfect consort, the only mortal on earth whose glory is a worthy match for her own divinity. She descends to Uruk, appearing before Gilgamesh in all her celestial beauty. Her voice is like honey, as she makes him an offer no mortal could possibly dream of refusing. "Come, Gilgamesh, be my husband," she says, her eyes promising him worlds of pleasure and power. "Give me your love as a gift. I will give you a bride price beyond your wildest imaginings. I will have a chariot of pure lapis lazuli and gold built for you, with golden wheels and horns of polished amber. You will not harness it with mules, but with great storm demons, the swiftest in the cosmos. When you enter our house, the scent of cedar will fill every room. Kings, princes, and lords will bow down before you. They will kiss your feet and bring you the tribute of the mountains and the lowlands. Your goats will bear triplets, your ewes will bear twins, and your household will overflow with blessings. It is a promise of absolute power, wealth, and fertility, a direct elevation from mortal king to a god's own chosen. But Gilgamesh, his heart still swollen with the hubris of his victory over Humbaba, is not impressed. He looks upon the beautiful, powerful goddess, and he feels not desire, but a cold, calculating mistrust. He has just defied one god's will in the cedar forest. Perhaps he now feels he is beyond the reach of any of them. He does not just refuse her offer. He throws it back in her face with a speech of such astonishing cruelty that it seals the fate of his entire world. "And what would I be required to give you in return?" he asks, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Fine oils for your body? Richly dyed garments? I have them, but you are a goddess. You do not need them. Bread and fine food? You have the food of the gods. What kind of bargain is this? You are a broken down door that fails to keep out the wind and the draft. You are a poorly made shoe that bites the foot of its owner. You are a palace that collapses on its own heroes. His insults are sharp, but he is just getting started. He leans in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, mocking tone, and begins to recite the history of her mortal lovers, a list of tragic figures who learned the price of her affections. "Let me just recount the list of your husbands," he says, a cruel smile on his lips. "What of Tammuz, the lover of your youth? You decreed for him a yearly weeping, a fate of endless sorrow. And what of the colorful roller bird? You loved him, and then you broke his wing, so now he sits in the woods crying, 'My wing.' You loved the lion, perfect in his strength, and for him you dug 7 pits. You loved the stallion, magnificent in battle, and you destined him for the whip, the spur, and a life of running 7 leagues at a time, forcing him to drink muddy water. You loved the loyal shepherd of the flock, and you turned him into a wolf, so that his own herd boys hunted him, and his own dogs tore at his flanks." He pauses, letting the litany of betrayals hang in the air before delivering the final, most personal insult. "And you loved Ishilanu, your own father's gardener. When he wisely refused your advances, you struck him down and turned him into a blind mole, unable to climb up or down. So," he concludes, his eyes cold and hard, "if you were to love me, would you not treat me just like all the others?" The effect of his words on Ishtar is instantaneous and volcanic. Her face, once a mask of divine desire, contorts with absolute fury and utter humiliation. To be rejected is one thing. To be publicly shamed with a perfect recitation of her past sins is an unforgivable insult. A strangled cry of pure rage escapes her lips. She turns, her divine form trembling with anger, and ascends back to the heavens, leaving a stunned silence in her wake in the streets of Uruk. She flies straight to the celestial throne of her father, the great sky god Anu, and her mother Antu. She stands before them, no longer a seductive goddess, but a weeping, vengeful child, her tears not of sorrow, but of incandescent rage. She is about to demand a terrible price for her wounded pride, a price that the entire city of Uruk will have to pay. In the celestial court of the gods, Ishtar stands before her father Anu, her beautiful face a mask of tear-streaked fury. She recounts the insults Gilgamesh threw at her, every cutting word a fresh stab to her divine pride. But Anu, the ancient and weary king of the heavens, is not moved by her rage. He is a god of order, and he sees the situation with a clear, impartial eye. "My daughter," he says, his voice the low rumble of distant thunder, "was he not correct in what he said? You have indeed been a cruel and capricious lover. Gilgamesh simply spoke the truth. Why should he be punished for it?" This rational response only fuels Ishtar's incandescent rage. Her plea turns into a terrifying ultimatum. Her voice drops to a hiss, filled with a power that makes even the great sky god uneasy. "Father, if you do not give me the bull of heaven to strike Gilgamesh down, then I will do the unthinkable. I will go down to the netherworld, and I will smash its gates. I will raise the dead from their beds of dust, and I will set them upon the world to devour the living. I will create a world where the dead outnumber the living." This is no idle threat. It is a promise of cosmic anarchy, a vow to shatter the fundamental laws of life and death, all to soothe her wounded ego. Anu is shaken. He understands the destructive power of his daughter's spite, but he also knows the power of the bull of heaven. He makes one last attempt to reason with her, appealing not to her heart, but to her duty as the goddess of Uruk. "If I give you what you ask," he says gravely, "do you understand the consequence? The breath of the bull of heaven brings not just death, but sterility. Its presence on the earth will cause 7 years of empty husked grain, 7 years of famine for the people of the land. Have you made provisions for this? Have you gathered enough grain to feed your people? Have you grown enough fodder to keep the livestock alive through 7 barren winters?" Ishtar, blinded by her quest for vengeance, waves away his concerns with a careless lie. "I have," she snaps. "I have stored up grain for the people. I have laid aside fodder for the animals. Do not worry about them. Just give me the bull." Seeing he is defeated, Anu sighs, a sound of cosmic resignation. He has no choice but to prevent the greater catastrophe of the underworld being unleashed. He gives his daughter the celestial nose rope, the tether that binds the bull of heaven. Ishtar seizes it, a triumphant, cruel smile on her face, and leads the great beast down from the stars to the unsuspecting city of Uruk. The bull of heaven is a terrifying spectacle. It is a creature of immense size, its hide the color of night, its horns sharpened points of moonlight. It is not an animal of flesh and blood, but a living instrument of divine wrath. It descends upon the city, and its rampage is immediate and devastating. It does not gore or trample at first. It simply lowers its massive head to the Euphrates River and lets out a great snort. With that one exhalation, the ground cracks and a massive chasm opens up, swallowing 100 of Uruk's young men without a trace. The city screams. The bull snorts a second time. Another larger pit yawns open, and 200 more men, warriors who had rushed to the city's defense, vanish into the earth. Panic and chaos grip the streets. Ishtar watches from the city walls, her heart filled with vicious glee. The bull prepares for its third and final breath. It turns, its dark eyes fixing on Enkidu, who stands firm amidst the chaos. The bull snorts, and the earth directly in front of Enkidu collapses into a gaping hole. He stumbles, falling into the pit, but with the lightning-fast reflexes of his wild past, he kicks off the crumbling sides and leaps back onto solid ground. He does not run. He does not cower. He faces the great beast, and with a ferocious roar of his own, he lunges forward, He dodges the deadly horns and grabs the bull by its thick, muscular neck, digging his heels into the shaking earth. The wild man, who once wrestled the king, now finds himself in a titanic struggle with a monster from the stars. He holds on, his muscles straining, and shouts to his friend, his king, his brother, Gilgamesh, we boasted we were strong, now we must prove it. Hearing his friend's desperate call, Gilgamesh is shaken from his momentary shock. He leaps into action, his movements no longer the wild lunges of the forest battle, but the swift, economical motions of a master. He circles the wrestling titans, the wild man and the celestial beast, his great sword in his hand, his eyes scanning for the perfect moment, the perfect angle of attack. Enkidu, using every ounce of his earthly strength, holds the bull's massive head, twisting its neck, denying the deadly horns their purchase. The beast bellows, its hot breath scalding the air, its hooves churning the ground into a muddy ruin. But Enkidu holds fast. He is the anchor, the immovable object holding the divine fury in place. My friend, he shouts through gritted teeth, between the horns, the nape of the neck, and the shoulders, thrust your sword deep in that spot. Gilgamesh needs no further instruction. Following his friend's guidance, he darts behind the struggling beast. For a single, perfect moment, as Enkidu wrenches the bull's head to one side, the vulnerable spot on its neck is exposed. Gilgamesh lunges, driving his long, heavy sword into the creature's spine with all the force of his divine heritage. The blade sinks deep, severing the cord of life. A final convulsive shudder runs through the bull of heaven. Its cosmic strength drains away in an instant. The great beast collapses to the earth with a ground-shaking thud, its legs folding beneath it, its lightless eyes staring into the sky from which it came. It is dead. For the second time, the two friends stand victorious over a slain monster. They have saved Uruk. Panting, they perform the proper ritual. They tear out the bull's great heart and lift it high, presenting it as a sacred offering to their divine protector, the glorious sun god Shamash, who had aided them once again. But their moment of pious victory is short-lived. Upon the great wall of Uruk, the goddess Ishtar appears, her face no longer vengeful, but contorted with the agonized grief of defeat. She lets out a high, piercing wail of lamentation, a curse upon the man who had scorned her. "Woe unto Gilgamesh," she shrieks, her voice echoing through the silent city. "Woe unto him who has slandered me and has slain the bull of heaven." Her curse rings in Enkidu's ears. He looks up at the wailing goddess on the wall, and the joy of victory turns to a hot, arrogant rage. He is filled with a sense of invincible power. He and his friend have defeated every monster, every obstacle. What is this goddess to them now? In a shocking, spontaneous act of supreme hubris, he reaches down, and with his immense strength, he rips the right thigh from the bull's massive carcass. He holds the bloody, steaming haunch aloft, glares at Ishtar, and hurls it at her. The gory missile sails through the air and lands on the wall near her feet. "If I could only lay my hands on you," Enkidu bellows, his voice dripping with contempt. "I would do to you what I have done to this beast. I would hang its entrails from your arms." This is the moment everything changes. To insult a goddess is one thing. To physically desecrate her divine instrument of vengeance and threaten her with its entrails is an unforgivable sacrilege. A horrified silence falls. Ishtar, splattered with the blood of her own champion, lets out a final cry of fury and vanishes. She gathers her sacred temple courtesans, the Shamhatu, and together they set up a formal, ritual lament over the severed thigh of the bull. The line has been crossed. Down in the city, however, the mood is one of wild celebration. Gilgamesh orders the bull's magnificent horns to be stripped and brought to the palace. They are filled with 6 kur measures of the finest oil, which he dedicates to the spirit of his deified father, Lugalbanda. The 2 heroes then wash the blood and grime from their bodies in the Euphrates and lead a triumphant parade through the streets. The people of Uruk, saved from certain destruction, line the way, cheering and throwing flowers. "Who is the most splendid among heroes?" they chant. "Gilgamesh is the most splendid. Who is the most glorious among men? Enkidu is the most glorious." That night, a great victory feast is held in the palace. The celebration is loud, the relief is palpable. But as the festivities finally die down and the heroes retire to their beds, Enkidu falls into a troubled sleep. He has thrown a piece of a monster at a goddess, an act of defiance that has shaken the foundations of the heavens. And in the quiet halls of the celestial realm, the gods have taken notice. The victory celebrations in the palace of Uruk ring hollow and distant. For in the royal bedchamber, Enkidu wakes from his troubled sleep with a cry of despair. He sits bolt upright, his face pale, his body trembling not from a chill, but from the terrible clarity of a divine vision. He turns to Gilgamesh, who is stirring beside him, and the words pour out of him in a torrent of sorrow and fear. "My friend, my brother, listen to the dream I had last night. The heavens cried out, the earth answered, and I stood alone between them." His voice drops to a hushed, terrified whisper as he recounts what he saw. The great gods were in council. Anu, the father of all, Enlil, the warrior, the counselor of the gods, and our protector, the glorious Shamash. They had assembled to pass judgment. In his dream, Enkidu witnessed the celestial trial for their deeds. He heard Anu speak first, his voice the final word of law, listing their crimes. "Because they have slain the bull of heaven, and because they have slain Humbaba, the guardian of the cedar forest." Anu's voice trailed off, leaving the sentence to be pronounced by the most fearsome of the gods. It was Enlil, his heart still burning with cold fury over the death of his servant Humbaba, who delivered the verdict. "One of them," Enlil decreed, his voice absolute. "One of them must die." Enkidu tells Gilgamesh how, in the dream, their own protector, Shamash, spoke up in their defense. The sun god argued passionately. "Was it not by my own command that they did these things? Are they to be punished for following my will? Enkidu is innocent. Why must he be the one to die?" But Enlil's rage was not to be appeased. He turned on Shamash, his voice dripping with contempt. "And you," he snarled, "you dare to defend them? You, who walked with them daily like a common comrade. It is because of you they have done this." Enlil's judgment was swift and merciless. He pointed to Enkidu's final, unforgivable act of hubris. It was not just the killing of the monsters. It was the personal, visceral insult to a goddess. The decision was made. The Council of the Gods, the ultimate court of appeal in the cosmos, had rendered its verdict. Enkidu must die. Enlil declared, "Gilgamesh shall not die." Enkidu finishes his tale, his face streaked with tears. "And so, my brother," he chokes out, "the great gods have cursed me. I will not die a hero's death in battle. I will die in shame, in a bed of sickness. Oh, my brother, my dear brother, they are taking me away from you." For the first time, Gilgamesh, the hero who has faced down monsters and stared into the face of terror, completely breaks. A great, shuddering sob escapes his lips, and he begins to weep, not with quiet sorrow, but with the raw, uncontrollable grief of a man whose entire world is being torn from him. He falls to his knees, pleading with the silent heavens, with a fate that has already been written. He offers to take his friend's place, to give his own life, to do anything to reverse the decree. But his words are just empty sounds against the terrible silence of a divine judgment already passed. He realizes in that moment the true limits of his power. His strength, which could shatter doorposts and slay monsters, is useless. His kingship, which gives him dominion over the greatest city on earth, is meaningless. His glorious victories now feel like ashes in his mouth. They have climbed a mountain of glory together, but the price for that climb is to be paid by Enkidu alone, and Gilgamesh, the great hero, is utterly powerless to stop it. The gods have made their decision. The joy of their triumph, the cheers of the city, the spoils of their adventures, all of it vanishes, replaced by the cold, dawning horror of a fate that cannot be escaped. As Gilgamesh weeps, a wasting sickness, the first breath of the underworld, begins to settle into Enkidu's bones. The verdict has been passed, and the sentence is now beginning. The divine judgment falls upon Enkidu not like a swift axe, but like a slow, wasting fever. He is confined to his sickbed, his mighty limbs, which had wrestled bulls and monsters, now leaden and useless. The great strength that was his pride drains away day by day, leaving him weak and shivering. Gilgamesh sits beside him, a constant weeping vigil. The great king of Uruk, the hero of the cedar forest, is reduced to a helpless bystander, able only to watch as the god's terrible sentence is carried out upon the person he loves most in the world. In the long, feverish hours, Enkidu's mind becomes a torment. His grief and fear curdle into a bitter, burning rage. He begins to lash out, not at the gods whose decree is absolute, but at the mortals who set his feet on this fatal path. His first curse is for the trapper, the man who first laid eyes on him in the wilderness. "May your hunting pits always be empty," he cries, his voice a hoarse whisper. "May the bounty of the plains vanish before you, and may the animals you seek always find a path away from your snares." His deepest and most venomous curse, however, is reserved for Shamhat, the temple courtesan who brought him into the world of men. He blames her for this slow, ignominious death, so different from the clean end he might have met in the wild. "As for you, Shamhat, I curse you to a terrible fate," he rasps, his eyes burning with fever. "May your roof never be your own. May you sit in the dust of the crossroads where the drunkard will slap your cheek. May your beauty be your ruin, and may your lovers cast you aside when they are finished with you." It is a brutal, agonizing torrent of blame, the desperate lashing out of a man who feels his life was stolen from him. As his bitter words hang in the still, sick-room air, a voice speaks to him, not from the room, but from the heavens. It is the glorious Shamash, the sun god, who had tried to defend him in the divine council. "Enkidu, why do you curse the courtesan Shamhat?" the god asks, his voice a gentle rebuke. Was it not she who gave you bread to eat, fit for the gods? Was it not she who gave you fine beer to drink, fit for kings? Did she not clothe you in a splendid robe? And more importantly, did she not give you the magnificent Gilgamesh to be your dearest companion and brother? Shamash's words are a balm of reason, forcing Enkidu to look back not just at the end of his journey, but at its glorious middle. He is reminded of the joy, the love, the profound connection he would never have known had he remained a beast of the plains. Enkidu's heart softens. The bitterness washes away, replaced by a wave of remorse. He looks at his weeping friend, and he understands the truth of the god's words. With what little strength he has left, he retracts his curse. Come, Shamhat, he whispers, his voice now gentle. Let me decree your fate anew, a fate of blessing. He blesses her, wishing upon her the love of kings, the adoration of the people, and gifts of fabulous wealth. It is an act of profound grace, an acceptance of his life, with all its pain and all its glory. He has made his peace with his own story. For 12 days he suffers, his life ebbing away. In his final hours, he turns to Gilgamesh one last time to recount a final, terrifying dream. The world was dark, he says, and I was seized by a creature with a lion's head and the talons of an eagle. He dragged me down to the house of dust, the land of no return. He describes the Mesopotamian underworld, a vision of eternal gloom. It is a place where dust is their food and clay is their bread. They are clothed not in robes, but in feathers like birds. They see no light. They sit forever in darkness. In this bleak house, he saw the shades of the great kings and priests of the past, now reduced to mere servants, fetching and carrying for the terrible queen of the underworld, Ereshkigal. This is the final horror, the knowledge that the end of this life of pain is not paradise, but a gray, joyless eternity where all earthly glory is meaningless. Having delivered this final, chilling vision to his friend, the long struggle ends. Enkidu's body grows still. His breath ceases. The wild man from the steppe, the brother of the king, is dead. Gilgamesh is left alone in the silent room with the body and with the terrifying knowledge of the dark house that awaits them all. For a long moment after Enkidu's final breath, a profound silence fills the room. Gilgamesh sits motionless, staring at the still form of his friend, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes can see. He reaches out a trembling hand and places it on Enkidu's chest, pressing down, searching for the familiar steady rhythm of life, but there is nothing. I touched his heart, he murmurs to the empty room, his voice a choked whisper of disbelief. But it does not beat. Gently, with an aching tenderness, he pulls a veil over his friend's face, covering him as one would cover a bride. And then, the dam of his composure shatters, and a grief more vast and terrible than any monster he has ever faced erupts from the very core of his being. He lets out a roar, a sound not of a king, but of a wounded lioness who has had her cubs stolen from her in the night. He begins to pace the chamber, back and forth, a caged, tormented animal. The magnificent robes of his office, the symbols of his glory, now feel like a suffocating weight. He seizes the fabric and rips it from his body, tearing it to shreds. He reaches up and tears at his own long oiled hair, pulling it out in clumps. His royal jewelry, his golden bracelets, and pendants of lapis lazuli. He rips them off and smashes them against the floor as if they were worthless trinkets. All the trappings of his great victory, all the symbols of his power, are now just meaningless garbage in the face of this immense, unendurable loss. For 6 days and 7 nights, Gilgamesh does not leave his friend's side. He refuses to allow the body to be buried, clinging to a desperate, irrational hope that the sheer force of his wailing, the depth of his love, might somehow call Enkidu back from the land of no return. He sits with the body, watching, waiting, as the slow, inexorable reality of death begins its work. The beloved face grows pale and cold. The strong limbs grow stiff. He watches until the 7th day, when the final undeniable sign of corruption appears. The epic tells us, with grim honesty, that he did not give his friend up for burial until a maggot dropped from his nostril. Only then, faced with this ultimate visceral proof of decay, does he finally accept that Enkidu is gone forever. He rises, his eyes hollow, and commands the greatest funeral the world has ever seen. He summons the artisans of Uruk, the smiths, the carpenters, the jewelers, and with a voice cracking with grief, he commissions a life-sized statue of his friend. "Your eyebrows shall be of lapis lazuli," he cries, "your chest of the purest gold, your body of the finest stone." It is a desperate, heartbreaking attempt to cheat death, to create an eternal, incorruptible image of the man he has lost. He piles up treasures as offerings to the gods of the underworld, bargaining for his friend's comfort in the house of dust he so feared. But after the funeral is over, after the statue is placed in its shrine, the great wound in Gilgamesh's soul does not heal. The grief festers, and in the long, silent nights, it transforms into something even more potent. A cold, gripping personal terror. He looks at his own hands, the hands that held his friend, and he sees their inevitable decay. Enkidu's death has held up a mirror to him, and in it he sees his own fate. "Shall I not die too?" he whispers to himself in the darkness of the palace. "Am I not just like Enkidu? A great woe has entered my belly. It is the fear of death that now possesses me. The old quest for a glorious name that will live forever now seems like a child's game. What good is an immortal name to a corpse rotting in the earth?" His focus sharpens, narrowing to a single desperate, all-consuming purpose. He must not die. He remembers the old legends, the whispers of a single man who escaped the fate of all mortals. A man named Utnapishtim, the Faraway, who survived the Great Flood and was granted eternal life by the gods themselves. This man, Gilgamesh decides, holds the secret. And so, a new quest is born, not of ambition, but of pure terror. He abandons his throne, his city, his people. He casts aside the last of his royal garments and dresses himself in the raw, bristling skin of a lion, a savage tribute to his own grief. And then, no longer a king, but a wild, haunted man, he turns his back on Uruk and plunges alone into the vast emptiness of the steppe, seeking the end of the world to demand from Utnapishtim the secret of life itself. The great walls of Uruk, the monument to his own ambition, shrink behind him and vanish into the haze of the steppe. Gilgamesh is now truly alone, a king no more, but a wild, grieving man clad in the skin of a lion. His journey is a blur of sorrow. He wanders the vast, empty plains, a landscape that was once the home of his friend. He eats what he can hunt, the raw flesh of wild beasts, and drinks from muddy water holes. He sleeps on the cold, hard ground, and his sleep is not the troubled, dream-filled sleep of a hero, but the exhausted collapse of a man fleeing from his own thoughts. And he weeps. He weeps for Enkidu, his brother, his other half, whose face he sees in the shimmering heat of the day, and whose voice he hears in the lonely whisper of the wind at night. This is not a quest for glory. It is a frantic, desperate flight from the one enemy his strength cannot defeat, the simple, absolute finality of death. After months of aimless, sorrowful wandering, driven only by the rumor of an immortal man at the ends of the earth, he arrives at a place that does not belong to the world of mortals. Before him rise the twin peaks of Mount Mashu, a sight of impossible cosmic grandeur. The two mountains stand as perfect mirror images, their peaks so high they pierce the very vault of heaven, their foundations sinking deep into the bedrock of the netherworld itself. This is a gateway, a liminal space that, according to legend, guards the daily passage of the sun. At dawn, the sun emerges from a gate between these peaks, and at dusk, it returns through it to travel its dark path through the underworld during the night. And the gate is not unguarded. Standing before it are two figures of such terrifying majesty that Gilgamesh, who has faced Humbaba, is frozen in his tracks. They are scorpion beings, a male and a female, their upper bodies human, their lower bodies the glistening, chitinous forms of colossal scorpions with tails poised to strike. A divine, shimmering radiance, the dreadful Malamu pulsates around them, an aura so powerful it could reduce a mortal man to dust. The epic tells us that the very sight of them is death. The scorpion man sees Gilgamesh approach, a strange, wild figure in his lion skin, and turns to his mate. "The one who comes towards us," he says, his voice like the grinding of stone. "His body is the flesh of the gods." His wife gazes at the approaching king and replies, "2/3 of him is God, but the 1/3 that is human is etched on his face with sorrow." The male scorpion being fixes his lethal gaze on Gilgamesh and challenges him. "Why have you traveled so far? Why have you crossed lands of terror and hardship to come to this place where no mortal has ever stood before? Explain yourself." Gilgamesh, who once answered a goddess with sneering contempt, is now a changed man. He is no longer arrogant, no longer proud. He is broken. He shields his eyes from their terrible splendor and pours out his story, his voice choked with grief. "I have come here because of my friend, Enkidu," he begins, "my brother, whom I loved more than anything in this world, the friend who crossed the mountains with me, who seized and killed the bull of heaven. My friend is dead. He has gone to the fate of all mankind, and I have wept for him for 7 days until his body could no longer be kept. And now I am afraid. I saw what became of him, and I fear that same fate for myself. Shall I not die too? Am I not just like Enkidu? And so I have journeyed here, seeking my ancestor, Utnapishtim, who they say stood in the assembly of the gods and found eternal life. I must ask him how to escape the death that has entered my belly." His confession is so raw, so filled with genuine pain and terror, that the monstrous guardians are moved. The scorpion man's terrible demeanor softens. He sees not an arrogant trespasser, but a soul in true agony. "The path you seek is one of great peril, Gilgamesh," he says, his voice losing some of its stony edge. No mortal has ever attempted it. He explains that the gate leads into the path of the sun, a tunnel of absolute darkness that runs for 12 double hours through the heart of the mountain. It is the road the sun takes at night. For 12 leagues, the guardian warns, there is no light. The darkness is dense and deep, and you will see neither what is behind you nor what is ahead. Gilgamesh does not flinch. His fear of the dark road is nothing compared to his fear of the eternal darkness of the grave. Seeing his unshakable resolve, the scorpion man gives his consent. Go then, Gilgamesh. The gate of the mountain is open to you. May you travel the road in safety. With a great scraping sound, the massive stone gate of the sun's path swings open, revealing not a passage, but a wall of solid, impenetrable blackness. Gilgamesh takes a breath, steels himself against the terror of the unknown, and steps across the threshold, immediately swallowed by a darkness more profound than he could have ever imagined. The moment he steps past the scorpion man's gate, the world vanishes. Gilgamesh is plunged into a darkness so absolute it feels like a physical substance. It is a blackness that swallows all light and all sound, leaving only the frantic pounding of his own heart and the rasp of his own breath. He puts one hand out, but feels nothing. He cannot see the ground beneath his feet, nor the path ahead, nor the gate that has just closed behind him. He is utterly blind, adrift in a sea of silent, suffocating night. He begins to walk, stumbling forward into the oppressive void. For 1 league, then 2, then 3, the darkness is unchanging. He is guided only by the feel of the path beneath his feet. The air is cold and still. The silence is a pressure on his eardrums. At the 4th league, then the 5th, a frantic terror begins to grip him. He feels a great wind rising from the darkness ahead, pushing against him, a cold, hostile force trying to drive him back to the world of light. He cries out, shouting Enkidu's name into the void, his voice swallowed by the immense echoing dark. He stumbles, falls, but forces himself to his feet and pushes on, his fear of this tunnel now locked in a desperate battle with his greater fear of the grave. At the 8th league, the darkness is at its most dense, the wind at its most fierce. He is deep in the earth's belly, in the dead of the cosmic night. But at the 9th league, he feels the wind shift. It is a cold north wind, carrying with it the faintest hint of something new. He pushes onward, and at the 10th league, his straining eyes detect a flicker, a distant, barely perceptible glimmer of light. Hope surges through him. At the 11th league, the light grows brighter, a promised dawn at the end of an impossibly long night. And at the 12th and final league, he bursts from the mouth of the tunnel and collapses onto the ground, gasping, his body trembling, his eyes blinded by the dazzling, glorious light of the rising sun. When his vision clears, he finds himself in a place of unearthly beauty. He is in a garden at the edge of a shimmering endless sea, but the trees here bear no earthly fruit. He is in the garden of the gods, and the trees before him are laden with gemstones. One tree is hung with clusters of rich, red carnelian. Another's foliage is made of polished lapis lazuli, which glitters in the sun. Thorns and briars are crafted from hematite and agate. It is a paradise of impossible mineral beauty, a place of dazzling light and color that is a stunning reward for his journey through the absolute dark. Wandering in a daze through this incredible landscape, he sees a tavern at the edge of the sea and a lone figure, a woman, veiled and watching him with suspicion. This is Siduri, the divine alewife, who keeps an inn for the gods at the end of the world. Seeing this haggard, wild-looking man in his filthy lion skin, his face a mask of grief and exhaustion, she is filled with fear. She mistakes him for a murderer or a desperate fugitive. She quickly bolts her gate and retreats to her roof, barring his way. Gilgamesh, seeing his path blocked, calls out to her, his voice rough with desperation. He repeats the same heartbreaking story he told the scorpion beings, explaining who he is, why he grieves, and the terrible fear that has driven him to the very edge of the world. Siduri listens from her roof, and her heart is moved by his pain. She comes down, unbolts her gate, and offers him not a path forward, but the deepest wisdom the ancient world possessed. Gilgamesh, where are you wandering in this madness? She asks, her voice gentle and sad. The eternal life that you are seeking, you will never find it. When the great gods created humankind, they allotted death for all mortals. They kept eternal life for themselves. So as for you, Gilgamesh, stop this quest. Go, fill your belly with good food and drink. Day and night, dance and be merry. Let your clothes always be fresh and clean. Bathe your body in cool water. Cherish the little child who holds your hand, and make your wife happy in your embrace. For this and this alone is the true task of mankind. It is a beautiful, simple, and profound piece of advice. She is telling him the secret of life is not to escape death, but to embrace the joys of mortality. But Gilgamesh is not ready to hear it. His grief is too raw, his fear too powerful. He shakes his head, his eyes still fixed on his impossible goal. No, alewife, he insists. Tell me, which is the way to Utnapishtim? Seeing that he is beyond reason, Siduri sighs, her heart full of pity for this broken king who cannot accept the simple, beautiful life she has offered him. Seeing the unshakable, grief-maddened resolve in the king's eyes, the divine alewife Siduri sighs. The passage you seek is all but impossible, Gilgamesh, she warns, her voice full of a sad finality. There is a great ocean that must be crossed, and in its midst lie the waters of death. Their touch is fatal to any mortal who feels it. No one has ever made that crossing, no one since the beginning of time, save for the glorious sun god Shamash himself. But, she adds, seeing his face fall, there is one who knows the way. In the forest nearby, you will find Urshanabi. He is the ferryman of Utnapishtim, the faraway. He is with the ones of stone. Find him. If it is possible, cross with him. If it is not, then you must turn back. Her words are a spark in the darkness of Gilgamesh's despair. He thanks her, and without a moment's rest, plunges into the nearby woods, his heart racing with a desperate hope. He moves with a frantic energy, and soon he comes upon a strange sight. A man by the water's edge, and with him a company of mysterious beings carved from stone. These are the Shut-Abni, the stone ones, the magical entities that somehow protect and propel the ferryman's boat across the lethal waters. Seeing them, Gilgamesh is overcome by a sudden, inexplicable fit of rage. Perhaps they look like monsters to his haunted eyes, or perhaps his grief has simply curdled into a blind, senseless fury. He raises his great axe, and in a shocking display of his old, thoughtless violence, He attacks the stone ones, shattering them into useless pieces. The ferryman Urshanabi spins around, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. "Who are you?" he shouts, looking at this wild man in a lion skin, panting amidst the wreckage. "What have you done? With your own 2 hands, you have just destroyed the very things that make the crossing possible. You have prevented your own passage." Gilgamesh, the destructive rage draining from him as quickly as it came, is left with the terrible consequences of his foolish act. He lowers his head, and for the 3rd time on his journey, he recounts the sad tale of his life, his love for Enkidu, his friend's unjust death, and the all-consuming fear that has driven him to this last, desperate shore. Urshanabi listens, and like the others before him, his anger is softened by the raw, genuine pain in the king's voice. But the practical problem remains. The magical protection of the stone ones is gone. "Your act was a foolish one, Gilgamesh," the ferryman says grimly. "But what is done is done. If you wish to cross now, you must do it with your own power." He sets Gilgamesh a new, immense, and penitential task. "Take your axe, go back into the forest, and cut me 300 punt poles, each one 60 cubits long. Sharpen them, cap them, and bring them here to me." The logic is brutal and simple. Without the stone ones, the boat cannot touch the waters of death. They must pole their way across, and each pole, once it touches the lethal water, must be immediately discarded. Their passage now depends on Gilgamesh's raw labor. Driven by his desperate need, Gilgamesh completes the grueling task. He fells the trees and painstakingly fashions the 300 massive poles, each one nearly 100 feet long. They load the enormous bundle onto Urshanabi's boat and push off from the shore. The journey is a long, tense, and utterly silent passage across a sea as smooth and gray as slate. Urshanabi stands at the rudder, steering, his face grim. Gilgamesh stands at the prow, his job to propel them forward. He takes the first pole, plunges it into the deadly water, pushes with all his might, and then lets it go, watching it drift away behind them. He takes a second pole and repeats the process, then a third. For hours he works in a steady, exhausting rhythm. Take, plunge, push, discard. It is a slow, arduous crawl across the face of oblivion. Finally, after hours of backbreaking labor, the last of the 300 poles is gone, and they are still not at their destination. Without a moment's hesitation, Gilgamesh sheds his lion skin garment. He stands up in the boat, a magnificent, heroic figure, and holds the skin aloft, using his own body and the ragged pelt as a makeshift sail to catch the faint wind. It is an act of sheer, indomitable will. And by this last, desperate measure, the boat finally glides towards a distant shore. As they draw near, Gilgamesh sees a solitary figure standing on the beach, an old man watching their strange and silent approach. They have arrived. The exhausted king, his long and terrible journey finally at an end, steps out of the boat and onto the sands, coming face to face with the one man in all of creation who had defeated death, Utnapishtim, the faraway. The old man on the shore regards Gilgamesh, his ancient eyes holding no surprise, only a deep, abiding weariness. He looks at the king's wasted cheeks, his sun-darkened skin, the raw animal pelt on his shoulders, and the profound sorrow that seems to cling to him like a shroud. "Why is your face so drawn?" Utnapishtim asks, his voice calm and steady. Why have you traveled so far, your heart filled with such woe, your body worn to a husk? And so, for the final time, Gilgamesh pours out his story. He speaks of the glory of Uruk, of the wild man who became his soulmate, of their great adventures and their perfect friendship. His voice cracks as he describes Enkidu's slow, ignoble death, the chilling vision of the House of Dust, and the terrible all-consuming fear that has possessed him ever since. He looks the immortal man in the eye, his own gaze a burning coal of desperation. I looked at my dead friend, and I thought, shall I not lie down like him and never rise again? And so I came to you, my ancestor, Utnapishtim. I have crossed mountains and seas. I have suffered every hardship, all to ask you one question. How did you join the assembly of the gods and find the secret of eternal life? Utnapishtim looks at the desperate king and lets out a long, slow sigh. The answer Gilgamesh seeks is not the one he expects. There is no secret formula, Gilgamesh, he says. My story is not a path that can be followed, but since you have come so far, I will reveal to you a hidden thing. I will tell you a secret of the gods. And so, the man who survived the end of the world begins his tale. Long ago, he says, the world was young, and I lived in the city of Shuruppak, a beautiful city on the banks of the Euphrates. But the great gods in their council, led by the fierce god Enlil, decided to destroy all of humankind. Their reasons were their own. They swore an oath of secrecy, but one of them, the clever god Ea, the Lord of Wisdom, did not wish to see all his creations perish. He came to my house, but to keep his oath, he did not speak to me directly. He spoke to the wall of my reed hut. Reed hut, wall, wall, he whispered. Listen, reed hut, and pay attention, wall. Man of Shuruppak, tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon your possessions and seek life. Build a vessel of specific dimensions and seal it with bitumen. Take aboard with you the seed of all living things. I did as the god commanded. I built the great boat in 7 days. I loaded it with my silver and my gold, with my family and my kin, and with all the beasts of the field, both wild and tame. On the appointed day, a terrible storm began. A black cloud rose from the horizon, and the thunder god Adad roared within it. The storm was so terrible that the gods themselves were afraid. They fled up to the highest heaven of Anu and cowered like beaten dogs against the outer walls. The goddess Ishtar shrieked like a woman in childbirth, crying, "How could I have commanded such an evil in the council of the gods? Now my people are choking the sea like flies." For 6 days and 7 nights, Utnapishtim continues, his eyes seeing the memory as if it were yesterday. The wind blew, and the floodstorm swept over the land. At dawn on the 7th day, the storm subsided. I opened a hatch and looked out. The world was silent. A flat, endless ocean stretched to every horizon, and all of humanity had been turned back into clay. I fell to my knees and wept. My boat had come to rest on the peak of Mount Nisir. After 7 more days, I sent out a dove, but it could find no perch and returned. I sent out a swallow, but it too returned. Finally, I sent out a raven. The raven flew off, and when the waters had receded, it found food, it cawed, and it did not return. I knew then that the world was dry. I disembarked and made a great sacrifice there on the mountain top. The sweet savor of the roasting meat rose to the heavens, and the gods, starved for offerings, gathered above the smoke like flies. All of them came, except for Enlil. When he arrived and saw the boat, he was filled with a terrible rage. "How did any living thing escape?" he roared, but the wise god Ea rebuked him for his thoughtless destruction. Enlil's anger cooled, and he came aboard my boat. He took my hand and the hand of my wife. He touched our foreheads, and standing between us, he blessed us. "Hitherto, Utnapishtim has been a man," he declared. "Henceforth, let Utnapishtim and his wife be like us gods, and live forever at the faraway place, at the mouth of the rivers." Utnapishtim falls silent. His story is finished. The devastating meaning hangs in the air. His immortality was not an achievement. It was a singular, unrepeatable gift from the gods, the unique resolution to a cosmic crisis. It is not a secret that can be learned or a prize that can be won. He looks at Gilgamesh, whose face has fallen in utter despair, and he asks the final, unanswerable question. "But now, Gilgamesh, for your sake, who will assemble the gods in council? Who will argue that you too should be granted eternal life?" The answer is a crushing silence. The king's quest is hopeless. Standing before the man who has tasted eternal life, Gilgamesh feels the full, crushing weight of his hopeless quest. Utnapishtim, looking at the king's exhausted, grief-stricken face, offers him one final, simple challenge, a test to prove how unsuited a mortal body is for an immortal existence. "Come now, Gilgamesh," the old man says, a knowing pity in his eyes. "You who wish to conquer death, let us see if you can first conquer its younger brother, sleep. Just for tonight, try to stay awake. Do not lie down for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh, determined to prove his worth, accepts the challenge. He sits down, his back straight, his eyes fixed, ready to begin his vigil. But the moment he settles, the immense exhaustion of his journey, a weight of mountains and seas and endless sorrow, descends upon him. A great mist of sleep, the epic says, blows over him like a storm, and he slumps to the ground in a slumber so deep it is like a temporary death. Utnapishtim looks down at the sleeping hero and chuckles softly to his wife. "Look at this great man who desires eternal life," he says. "He cannot even stay awake for a moment." To provide undeniable proof of the passage of time, his wife begins a simple daily ritual. Each morning, she bakes a single loaf of wafer-thin bread. She places the fresh loaf beside Gilgamesh's head and makes a mark on the wall beside him for each day he has slept. On the 7th day, Utnapishtim gently touches the king, and he awakens with a start. "I hardly slept," Gilgamesh says, disoriented. "A moment of drowsiness just overcame me." Utnapishtim says nothing, but simply points to the row of bread loaves. "Look at your bread, Gilgamesh. The first loaf is dry and hard. The second is leathery. The third and fourth are covered in a gray mold. The fifth is spotted with mildew. The sixth is still stale, and only the seventh, the one my wife just baked, is fresh." The evidence is irrefutable. Gilgamesh stares at the decaying bread, a perfect timeline of his own failure. He has failed the test. He cannot conquer sleep. He can never conquer death. Defeated, he prepares to leave. His quest, a total failure. As Urshanabi the ferryman readies the boat, Utnapishtim's wife whispers to her husband, "Gilgamesh came all this way. He has suffered and toiled. What will you give him as a gift to take back to his land?" Moved by pity for the broken king, Utnapishtim decides to reveal one last, secret consolation prize. Gilgamesh, he calls out, I will tell you a hidden thing, a secret of the gods. At the bottom of the deepest sea, there grows a plant. It has a thorn just like a desert rose, and it will prick your hand. But if you can obtain this plant, it holds a marvelous power. It is called the old man becomes a young man again. It will not grant you eternal life, but it will restore your lost youth. A final, desperate hope ignites in Gilgamesh's heart. He goes to the shore, ties heavy stones to his feet, and like the pearl divers of the great sea, he sinks down, down into the abyss. He finds the thorny plant, and though it tears at his hands, he grasps it firmly and brings it to the surface triumphant. He shows it to Urshanabi, his eyes wild with this new, more tangible prize. This is the plant of rejuvenation, he cries. I will take it back to Uruk. I will give it to an old man to eat first, to test its power, and then I will eat it myself and have my youth returned to me. On their long journey home, they make camp one night beside a cool, clear pool of water. Gilgamesh, feeling safe and victorious, carefully places the precious, thorny plant on the bank and goes to bathe in the pool. As he is washing, a serpent, lurking in the cool water, catches the sweet, otherworldly fragrance of the plant. The snake slithers silently from the pool, seizes the plant in its mouth, and swallows it whole. Instantly, the serpent sheds its old, wrinkled skin, leaving it on the ground like a dry husk, and glides away, smooth and young again. Gilgamesh returns from his bath to find his treasure gone, and nothing left but the empty, sloughed-off skin of a snake. He has lost it. He has lost everything. He sits down on the ground, and for the first time, he weeps not with the wild, roaring grief he felt for Enkidu, but with the quiet, bitter tears of utter defeat. Empty-handed, his last hope stolen by a serpent's appetite, he completes the journey home with Urshanabi. As the great, sun-baked walls of his city finally rise on the horizon, something inside him changes. The frantic desperation, the terror, the grief, it all settles into a calm, bittersweet wisdom. He turns to the ferryman, and his voice is no longer that of a pleading, frightened man, but of a king who has finally found his kingdom. He gestures to the magnificent city before them. Urshanabi, he says, with a new, quiet pride. Climb upon the wall of Uruk and walk along its top. Inspect its foundation platform. Examine its fine brickwork. Is it not made of the finest baked brick? Did the 7 sages themselves not lay its foundations? He points out the city's expanse, its orchards, its temples, its clay pits. He has returned with no magical plant, no secret to eternal life. But he sees now what has been there all along. His true immortality is not in his body. It is in the great, enduring work of human hands, in the community he leads, in the magnificent city that will stand long after he has turned to dust. The wall he built in his youthful tyranny has become the symbol of his final, mature peace. And in that acceptance, his long, painful journey finally finds its end.